Got a bunch of my parts here lined up. Got our front end links here, Precision Chassis K8702. These are our front end links. Normally I go with Moog, but it's the same part number. It's probably the same. It's just whatever the parts store had in stock. These are our rear end links, part number K3124. Upper and lower radiator hose, because we're going to replace that when we do the radiator. Tie rods, outer tie rod ends, brand new spark plugs, brand new radiator cap for the new radiator, brand new thermostat, air filter, spark plug wires, fuel filter, oil filter, basically the whole works. There's definitely some parts that are missing here, the brakes, the rear wheel cylinders, the thermostat gasket, some clamps. So there's stuff I'm still waiting for to come in the mail. So we're going to get started with what we have. I'm going to throw the air filter in, and then I'm going to start throwing the spark plugs in. I already pulled the old filter out. Not terrible, not the worst I've seen. Definitely dirty. So we're going to put the new one in just because then I know it's new. I'm going to do the front three plugs here first. This one I've actually already had out. So basically we're going to do, I'm just going to change the 3 plugs here, and then I'll do the 3 plugs on the back, and then I'll come back and change the wires. That way we do one at a time, so that we make sure we get the wires back in the right spot. So this one should come off pretty easily, because like I said, I've had it out before. And if the other, yeah, they're definitely, so this one, like I said, I had this one out already. Had a lot of crust around it, so we'll take the air compressor and the vacuum, and before we break them loose, we're gonna clean it out so we don't get any dirt in the engine bay. Oh, excuse me, in the cylinders. So this one we've already had out. Doesn't look too bad, considering it's probably the original plug. It actually looks pretty good, but like I said, I have brand new ones, and these were cheap. I think I paid 13 bucks for the set, so we're gonna go ahead and throw the new one in. One of our brand new plugs. They come pre-gap to 44 thousandths. So we'll go ahead and put this in the cylinder. Just get the thread started. And I'm just going to put the wire back on it temporarily. We're going to come back around after I change all the plugs, and I'll put the new wires on and some dielectric grease on just on the tip. The old one had a little bit on it. Just get that in there, and I'll snug it down. All right, that plug's been changed. We'll move over to the middle one and the end one here and do the same. Okay, I cleared all the debris out of the last 2 front plugs here, so I'm going to go ahead and change those out. Let's see, 5/8 smaller spark plug socket. I got a 3/8 drive ratchet, breaker bar on it, and we're just going to crack them loose. There we go. That one's loose. We'll come back and undo that in a second. Same with this guy. This guy we're going to need a shorter extension on. Someday I'll get a tool cart. Oh, that one's loose. That's cool. Not really. That's interesting. I didn't even crack that one loose. That one already was loose. That's weird. See what that looks like. The car was running all right. I'm just doing this is preventative maintenance. This car is pretty much all original from what I can see of it. There we go. I don't know if the camera will pick up on that. It's not too bad. I mean, I've seen worse, but These are platinum plugs, so they'll go 100K, and it's got 116 on it. So I'm going to assume that these are original. Brand new Motorcraft plugs. I try to use OEM plugs wherever possible. Brand new plug. Like I said, I'll come back around later when I change the wires and put a little dielectric grease on the tip of each one with the new wires. So get that threaded in there. Then we'll move back to the middle one. That's in the finger snug. Okay, there we go. That one is done. Just put our boots back over it, just temporarily, just so we can, want to make sure, you know, so we can get the wires back in the right spot. All right, get this middle plug out here, and the back will be much more fun. There we go. About the same condition as the other plugs. No. All right, front 3 plugs have been changed out. Let's do the back ones. All right, for the back plugs here, we will do the same thing. I've already got this wire off. I've got to get the middle and outer wires off, and then I will take the compressor and blow as much dirt out as I can, we don't want any dirt getting down into the engine. There we go. All right, all 3 are off. They just hang in place, and we'll get our hairline back there. Last one's going to be tricky. Okay. There we go. Same exact procedure back here. Gonna crack them loose and change them out. one's cracked loose. That one's cracked loose too. And the last one will be a pain in the butt. I have to have a longer extension on that, so. All right, we're gonna change out these first two and then worry about the last one after. Coolant line's in the way. There we go. Now we're going to work on it. So we got all the plugs changed yesterday. I'm going to do the wires one by one. And the front ones are pretty easy. We're just taking a little tiny screwdriver, or you can probably take a pick, and you just open up these clips, and we're going to start, I'm going to take one off. I've got this one already undone. I've just got to pull it through, and we're going to pull it off of our distributor cap here, which I am going to end up replacing because you can see there's a lot of crust and stuff in there. I don't have one in hand, so we're going to change the wires, and then I will swap it over after I get a new cap and rotor for it. I got our front wires done and all wired back into place here. These are OEM Motorcraft wires that fit this car. I feel like they're a little longer than what came off the car. I'm not really happy with the way, I guess, that they fit as compared to the actual original ones that I took off. I've still got to do the back ones, and I'm going to have to replace the rotor and distributor cap just because there's some wear in those items as well. So we can take a look back here. So these are the three longest ones I have left, which should go along the back side. And basically what I do is I'll pull one at a time and I match up, the closest length. The other thing I didn't like is, so the factory wire from the rotor, or distributor cap rather, to the coil pack has this nice clip on it. They're not aftermarket ones, but the factory replacement ones don't have that clip. So that's something I don't like about that set. And this set is for this car. So, and I vaguely remember running into that with the other car when I did it too. I try to buy as much OEM parts as possible, especially on an older car like this. I just like the OEM fit better. I was able to get all the wires changed in the back. I did order a new cap and rotor from Advanced Auto Parts. I gotta go pick that up later. We'll change that out. This has got some etching and stuff in it. That looks like it might be worn a little bit, so probably a good idea to change it. So we've got pretty much all that done at the moment. I'm probably going to work on doing the front tie rods and end links next, because that'll be the next, we'll call it, easiest job, and then the front suspension will be done for now. My brakes should be in later today. and we'll move back there at some point to get that done, and then it'll be the radiator, and then the car should be drivable. We got to clear a mouse nest out there, and we'll go from there. So the first thing we're doing on the passenger side, I'm going to change the outer tie rod and the end link. I've already cracked this bolt loose to 21mm bolt. I'm going to put a little bit of electrical tape just around the back side of it because I want to remember where this bolt is, or this nut is, for alignment purposes. We want to get it really close. We're going to pull the pin out, pull the nut off, pop this tie rod end off, put the new one on. Actually, before I put the new one on, I'll probably go and work on getting the end link off because this is kind of a pain in the butt. And then we'll flip over to the other side and do the other side. This is just so the nut doesn't back off anymore. I want to get it as close as possible. I took the cotter pin out, took the castle nut off, 18mm nut. I'm going to use my OTC part number 6296 puller. We're going to pop that tie rod end out. It's part of this kit here from OTC. Love it. Great kit. Used it in a couple of my other videos. It's got a 3/4. You need a 3/4 socket on it. So we're going to slide this in here like so. And I doubt I have enough room under here to use my impact. So I will typically put safety goggles and stuff on just in case, because it will go boing. Oh, that was uneventful. So we'll just twist this off. The nut's pretty much in the same spot that it was. So we'll get this old nasty tie rod end off. And now I have soaked it in Kroil. When I came under here after I bought the car, I soaked everything that I was going to take apart in Kroil. So it's probably been almost a week. There we go. And you can see the boot is completely gone. And there's also no grease fittings on the factory ones. So the new ones that I bought have grease fittings on them. So we'll put the new one on. We're going to work on getting the end link off first. I successfully got the outer tie rod off and the end link off. I broke out my mini ductor venom. Love this tool. I've used it in other videos, so if you want to see how it works, you can go check out one of my other videos. This is more of a vlog video than a how-to because, well, let's face it, I'm not really sure how many people are rebuilding 94 Ford Tauruses, so. All right, so we got that all apart. I'm gonna put the new end link on. I'm gonna clean up the mating surfaces. They're kind of hot still from the mini ductor venom. Heated up the bolts pretty good, and we'll start putting it back together, and we'll move over to the other side. All right, I get everything back together, greased up. I'm gonna throw the tire back on and move over to the other side. I got the nut loosened up there. I got the cotter pin out. I got the bolt off or the nut off of the end of the inner or outer tie rod. Now we're gonna pop the tie rod out. Well, that went significantly easier than they normally do. There we go, she's disconnected. So do the same thing. We'll take this end link off, we'll change it all, and put it back together. I'm gonna use my mini ductor venom here. You're gonna start to see it smoke a little bit. This is on the end link. And we're gonna let it get cherry red, and then we're gonna hit it with the impact. We'll get the top one loose or out, and then we'll switch over. We'll switch the adapter so I have an angle on it, and we'll hit the back one, or the lower bolt. There you go. You can see the nut starting to get red. Smoke is starting to dissipate a little bit, and grease is starting to drop out the back side of it. So we get that bolt pretty hot. And of course, that one's going to be real stuck, and we're going to have to put pliers on it. All right, we get the top one out. I hit it with the mini ducted venom, put a pair of pliers on the back, and then hit it with the impact gun. Unfortunately, this bottom one we cannot hit with the impact gun because it faces inward and there's too much stuff in the way. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to switch over my bit on my mini ducted venom, or my tip, whatever you want to call it. So I got an angle. I got one that's got a bit of an angle on it. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to heat it up, but then I'm going to take my 18mm ratchet and hopefully I'll be able to break that loose without too much trouble. So put that over that. The other side on the bottom, I got it nice and cherry red, and it came right off. This side I think is going to be a little more tricky. Oh, it's on there. There we go. Can't tell if I'm spinning the, yeah, I'm spinning the stud. All right. So in that case, what we're going to do on these, take a pair of vice grips. And now a lot of the newer aftermarket end links have spots for a wrench. These factory ones do not. And since they're already destroyed, it doesn't much matter. We do not touch that because it's hot. There we go. All right, she's off. Now we can let that cool off and clean it up and throw the new parts on. Got both sides. This is the driver's side. Just completed changing out the outer tie rod and the end link. All greased up, tightened down, torqued and everything. I'm going to throw the tire back on, and the front end, as far as I'm concerned, is done for the moment. We'll have to go, I've got to go chase the rotor cap, or the rotor, the distributor cap, and some antifreeze and oil. And pretty much once we get that done, the front of the car will be complete. I'll be moving to the back side of the car and doing the brakes and the rear wheel cylinders. Alrighty, got the car up on some ramps, and we're draining the oil. It's a 16mm bolt, and it takes roughly 4.5, 5 quarts of oil from what I read and remember. So we'll get this changed out. While I get it up on ramps, we're gonna hit the drain cock on the bottom of the radiator, and we're gonna let it drain so I can start swapping that out. Another parts store trip, got our high-tack sealant for our thermostat gasket, our new rotor, and our new distributor cap. So we're going to swap those out, and I'm basically going to do one for one, and we'll put it back together. I've got the radiator draining into a bucket, and the car is on jacks. The oil has been changed, new filters on. I've got to get the transmission lines. Those are going to be the transmission cooler lines. Those are going to be fun to get at. And then The lower hose is also going to be fun to get at on the water pump side because it's like right under there. Upper hose is pretty straightforward. Might have to pull the air box out to get at the gooseneck because I've got a brand new thermostat that'll go in as well. Swapped out the rotor and the cap. You can see in there all that crust. I tried knocking some of it off with the screwdriver. Not sure what that's all about. The rotor itself really doesn't look too bad. I actually went with the Duralast, the CarQuest parts for this, only because that cap and rotor that say Motorcraft on them, it's like 50 bucks. This little the rotor is more than the cap. Well, I made some progress this morning. We disconnected the upper radiator hose. The lower radiator hose is disconnected. I have pulled the coolant fan out. I've got the upper transmission coolant line disconnected. And really the last major hurdle is the lower transmission coolant line, which is down here. And I pulled the fan hoping I'd have a little more room to get in there. Plus I've got to get these two brackets off the bottom for that cooler line. And then there's 2 bolts on each of these tabs up here that hold the radiator in, and then it should tip back and slide up and out. Then we can get the lower radiator hose off, the upper radiator hose and the gooseneck off, new thermostat, new hoses, new radiator, boom, put it back together. All right, I got the radiator out. This is where it was leaking over in here. You can see it was kind of dripping down the side, and I got my knuckle pretty good there, I guess. And you know, when the car was under pressure, it was coming out here and then running under the core support. The other side looks pretty dry, but we got a brand new one to put in. I've got to get this tranny cooler line off. This is fun. The top one's not fun to get out, but it's doable in the car. The bottom one runs actually through the core support. So what I did, and I think this has been looked at before because it had a aftermarket clamp on it. It wasn't a factory Ford clamp. So I took the clamp off. I had to cut the rubber because it wouldn't come off the line, but we'll just cut this bracket off and I'll just put another short piece of clean rubber in there and reclamp it, and that's how we'll handle that. So this is where the fan clamps up, fan clamps there, and the upper tranny coolant line wraps under here and goes up into this fitting. So we'll have to transfer these bolts over. Radiator's fully drained, and you can see, oops, let me turn my light back on here. Doesn't look too bad in there. I gotta get some leaves cleaned out, and maybe I'll spray some fluid film under there just to protect it a little bit. And then we'll put the new radiator back in. I did have to disconnect the alternator harness to get it out of the way. Broke one of the tabs, so we'll have to get another one and tack that on there. But otherwise, not too bad. We'll put the new radiator back in and clean it up. I got the lower line out of the radiator. Had heated up with the torch a little bit. You can see this is what the lower line looks like. Don't mind my messy workbench. Put some heat to this piece. This is the piece that goes into the radiator. Loosens it up with some coil and heat, so now we can reuse it. I cut the clamp off, cut the hose off, so I get a new piece of hose and a new clamp. You can see right here, this is what it looked like, and then it went to a cooler in the front of the car. So we'll get a new clamp and hose. And then coming back over to the car, I took the upper radiator hose off. I've cracked these 2 bolts loose for the thermostat. I've got to figure out how to get this 3rd bolt loose, and then the thermostat will come off. We'll clean up the mating surfaces. I'll put some high tack on there, put the new thermostat in, and put that back together. All right, I got the thermostat housing off, the gooseneck off. It goes in the block like so. Had to pull these 13mm bolts and slide this wiring harness out of the way. So now we can take this apart, clean the gooseneck up, and put the new thermostat and gasket. I got the gooseneck cleaned up. I got the new thermostat here. It's a 197 degree Motorcraft OEM thermostat. Part number, unfortunately, I have it on my computer somewhere. One quick thing I wanted to show you is, see, it's not, the thermostat's not a circle. At the top here, you can see this little, it's basically a bleeder valve to help let the air pockets out of the system. In the gooseneck, you can see the circle, the hole where the thermostat sits is also kind of oblong. So you want this bleeder valve piece to go upward so the air gets out. So you're gonna put it in like this, and you can really only put it one way, because if you try to put it upside down, it's not gonna fit. Almost back together at this point. We got our radiator in, radiator fan in, so this is the CCRM and one of the airbag sensors reinstalled, upper radiator hose, new thermostat and gasket all installed. Transmission coolant lines are back in place. I even got the factory anti-rattle clip. I don't know if my camera will pick up on that. Reinstalled, brand new radiator cap. So really the last piece of the puzzle, two things. I'm working on putting this corner back together, putting our air box back in, reconnecting our mass airflow sensor and breather tubes, etc. I got the closeout panel that's got to go back on, and then underneath here, I don't know if my camera will pick up on it, I had to drop the wheel liner, well liner. I've got to crawl underneath here and get the lower radiator hose off, but there is a bolt in the way that I've got to get out. Last piece of the puzzle here that I still have to get off the car is the lower radiator hose, and you can see the lower radiator hose is right there, and I've got to get to that clamp. There's not a lot of room with this coolant line bracket in the way. I think it's for it's either for the power steering or it's for the AC. I'm not really sure. I haven't traced them out, but I pulled this 13mm bolt off. I loosened that. It's an 8mm bolt that holds the line to, well, the lines to the clamp. I'm gonna try and slide those out of the way, and then hopefully I can get my pliers in there and get the line, or the lower radiator hose off, and slip the new one on, and then that should be done. I had to pull the recovery tank, or the coolant recovery tank, and the washer fluid tank, idler and tensioner pulley, and the belt, just to get to this point, because that bolt is in the way, or the frame rail of the car is in the way to get it from underneath. So I probably didn't have to pull the wheel well out. It's been a while since I've worked on this particular car. It's kind of coming back to me as I've done it. So this is my ear lift tool that I'm using on the car. I don't remember what the model number is. Right there, part number 550000. Basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna plug the top of the radiator. They give you a bunch of different fittings, so this will work in a traditional radiator or just a tank style. You're gonna hook this venturi up, you're gonna open this valve. You have this hose on here when you're sucking it down that I have into a bucket, just in case there's any extra coolant that's in the system. You want to connect roughly 90 pounds of shop pressure to your tool here, and you're going to hear a hissing. See if I can do this one-handed. So you can see this is what it's supposed to do when it works. I am still fighting with a leak here over my overflow, but you can see it's largely in the green, which means that I do not have any kind of leaks, or any kind of leak. Now, if I let go here, you're gonna see my finger come off. Now I got a vacuum leak. You're essentially creating a vacuum on the system. And what we're gonna do is, once we have that vacuum, we're gonna use that vacuum to pull all the coolant in so you don't get any air pockets in the system. Another thing you'll notice is you'll see the radiator hoses go completely flat. It's basically you're putting a vacuum on the system. So now we're going to let off, and I've got to figure out how I'm going to block this hole so that I can put the coolant back in, because I kind of need my finger. But this basically is proving to me that the system otherwise has no leaks. So if I let my finger off here, it stays stable. So we'll have to suck it down again. All right, to fill this up, we want a super clean bucket. So we're gonna take our antifreeze here. This is pre-diluted stuff. I know I took about 2.5 gallons out of this car. So we're gonna fill this bucket up and we're gonna put our suction hose in it, and then we're gonna open our valve and it's gonna suck all this coolant into the car. And the reason we do it this way is, again, to keep you from having to burp the system. Especially on this car, from what I remember, it's kind of a pain in the butt. It has a lot of air pockets. Okay, so we got our hose in the bucket. It's hooked up to our gauge here, and we should be. See, the problem is I got to do this two-handed, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to show you this. I can't. So this strainer has to stay in the bottom of the coolant, otherwise you'll lose suction and then you're done. So there we go. It is sucking coolant in, and we just need to make sure that the nozzle doesn't come out, otherwise we'll lose suction. We've pretty much filled our coolant system. When the gauge gets down to pretty much 0, the system is full. You should start to see your hoses come back, and that should be pretty much that. We can take it apart, and I'll put the rest of this side back together and fire it up and make sure we don't have any leaks. You want to make sure you rinse these hoses out good in between uses. Alright, got everything finished up, buttoned back up. She's idling here. I'm going to let her come up to temperature. I got it out of the garage. The left rear brake is definitely stuck when I pulled her out. That was fun. Battery is not the right battery, so I can't really take it for a ride until I get the system all burped, which you really shouldn't have to do using the airlift system, but it does seem to be a little bit of air in there, so we'll let it come up to temperature, and it's probably from the heater core and stuff. I'll have to get another battery for it, but it is running. It's not even off a cold yet. I really just fired it up. This is the car. Like I said, I've got it out of the garage. I've got to do the rear brakes. This one is sticking, and it is the wheel cylinder's leaking a little bit. And got my plates on, and it needs a bath really bad. So maybe we'll try and do that later. But overall, car is back together. So that's just from when I opened the radiator cap. Thought I was leaking. She's not. Scared myself. I am working on the end links and rear brakes today. The hardest part of getting the end link out is this top bolt here. Normally, if I was going to replace the strut, I would just say the heck with it and leave it attached to the strut and take the strut out, but I'm not. You can see the pads are actually pretty good. I don't know if the camera will pick up on it. The wheel cylinder is weeping a little bit. I have all the hardware. The drum has got a pretty good ridge to it here. Like I said, I bought all new brakes for the back, so I'm just going to go ahead and do them. That way they're fresh. That one is sticking, and the left rear is sticking quite a bit. And this one was sticking a little bit, but I think it would have cleaned up. And the wheel cylinder on that side is leaking pretty heavily too. I was bad about videotaping or recording the other side. I opted to redo the brakes. After looking at, this is the passenger side rear. Originally I wasn't going to because the shoes weren't too bad. They were a little worn down here. And I decided that I just wanted to go have some fun with the car, and they weren't worn enough where they were a safety issue quite yet. They weren't to the rivets, and that I would deal with it later. However, the other side was way worse. It was all stuck. I had to pull it apart. Ended up breaking stuff getting it apart because it was all rusted. So we're back on the passenger side, and I'm going to change the shoes and everything. This set of brake drums is actually very easy to do. I've already started taking it apart, unfortunately. I did the wheel cylinder already. You have a that rides here, like so, and this is what keeps the adjuster locked in place and helps adjust it. There's a spring that goes across from here to this clip, keeps that taut. You have these two spring pieces here that you'll pop off, and then there's another spring underneath here that goes across, and then you have your emergency brake lever, which has got a clip on the back side. So pretty easy to do as far as drum brakes go. I got the new shoes and hardware kit on the passenger side rear corner here. So you can see the adjuster is in there like that. This is the clip that rides on this pin here. Spring goes across. Springs and pins go through to hold the shoes on, and then there's another spring on the bottom here. I've actually got to go back on the other side because I put it in the wrong spot. I couldn't tell in my previous pictures, so I'll go back and fix that. But then the drum should go right over all this. The adjuster is fully retracted, so we'll probably have to go in after once I've get everything back on the ground and just see how the pedal feels. I've got to go get a brake line. The other brake line was rotted and I couldn't get it off. This one I was able to save. So once I do that and bleed the brakes and everything, we'll be able to put it back together.